Good morning, Morai, Rabotai, Bruchim Abayim. We are continuing our Masechet Succah. We are at the very last stretch, last Amud of the Masechta of Nun Vav. Amud Bet by 2 dots, 2 lines before the beginning of the wide lines. Today's Amud is being learned as a Zchut Rufah Shalema for Daniela Bat Rachel Manzal Bat Saltanat Goltash, sponsored by the Dan family. Also sponsored anonymously for Rufah Shalema of Daniel Moshe Ben Farangis Avraham, Shtav Rufah Shalema, Rufah Shalema of Sarah Bat Mina by Mrs. Taban, and the Ilui Nishmat Betzalel Ben Rafael Ve'Esther by Mabubi family, the Ilui Nishmat Shlomo Ben Yaakov, and for the Zchut Hatzlacha Ve'Zivuk for David Chaim Ben Ephraim by the Shraga family. This Amud, and the week's learning of the community has been graciously sponsored by Mahbubi family and Shei family. It should be an ultimate Zchut for all the Mishpachot B'ezrat Hashem. Amen. So the last item that was mentioned in the last Mishnah was a very strange knas, fine, that was given to one of the 24 mishmarot of the Keuna, Mishmeret Bilga. Right? That's how we saw it. We mentioned that in Divrei Yamim, actually the list of all the Mishmarot Keuna are mentioned. The 15th of the Mishmarot mentioned there is Mishmeret Bilga, and they got the fine of not having the zchut of being in Safon. We mentioned that the 2 Mishmarot every Shabbat, they divided the sides of the Azara. The incoming Mishmar would be in Safon in the north, which is more Chashuv, the Koche Kodashim there, and so on. And the outgoing Mishmar would be in Darom in the south. By Mishmeret Bilga, always they were in Darom. So even when they were the incoming Mishmar, the Mishmar prior to them is their brother Yeshevav. So Yeshevav would always be in Safon. Even when they're outgoing, they're still in Safon because Bilga is knast to be in Darom. So that's one. And secondly, their tabat was locked up. The ring that they had to make it more smooth and easy for the shechita of korbanot, for them it was locked up. They had to either borrow other people's tabat, or they just didn't simply have one, and they had to hold the animal down with their hands, with different people helping out. And also their kabi was locked down. They didn't have a place to have their utensils stored away. They had to borrow and use other people's. So says the Gemara over here in Nun Vav Amud Bet regarding these knases. Tanu Rabbanan Maaseh Miriam Bat Bilga She'emira Data. There was a daughter from this family, a daughter of Bilga, that unfortunately in the time of the Chashmonaim, in the time of the Greeks, this is smack in the middle of the period of Beit Sheni, she became a Goya. Unfortunately, she went off the path, and she joined basically the Hellenist movement, joined the Yevanim, and not only that, but she got married to one of the high officials of the Greek government. ונישאת לסרדיot אחד ממלכי יוונים, one of the kings of Yevanim, כשנכנסו יוונים להיכל, and when they succeeded to enter the Hechal, הייתה מבעטת בסנדלה על גבי המזבח. She went on top of the mizbeach, she's kicking the mizbeach in a very disgraceful way. ואמרה, and she says, locus, locus, which Rashi says in Lashon Yevani, locus is a ze'ev. עד מתי אתה מכלה ממונן של ישראל? Until when you swallow, you finish up the money of the Jews, ואתה עומד עליהם בשעת הדחק, and you don't even do anything when they look at this. We are Yevanim now, we came in, we took over, look at where the Jews are, and where we are, you didn't do a thing for them when they needed you. So basically disgracing the entire concept of korbanot and the mizbeach, saying it's worthless. The whole thing doesn't work. The whole thing is bogus and empty. So says the Gemara, when Chachamim heard this, that she was so disrespectful to the concept of korbanot, the avodah of the mizbeach, they find the entire mishmeret, kav'u et tabata v'satmu et chalona. They find them. Now, before we even go further, the second reason that the Gemara brings, what is this whole thing of locus? Why ze'ev? So I wanted to suggest, and someone told me that this already has been brought by others as well, that the Mizbeach, the Mikdash was both in the chelek of Yehuda and also Binyamin, right? Now Binyamin is called the Ze'ev, right? Binyamin Ze'ev Yitraf, right? Laboker Yechal. Teref, in the morning he eats the chaps, he grabs the teref, and in the afternoon also, and the Chazal already say, Binyamin Ze'ev Yitraf is the Mizbeach. In the morning he will eat Korban Tamid Shel Shachar. In the afternoon, Yechalek Shachar will be Korban Tamid Shel Ben Harbaim. That is very much said already in Chazal, that this is like a Ze'ev that grabs the Korbanot of Klal Yisrael. So she was actually using the already known terminology for Binyamin being Ze'ev Yitraf, which is a positive connotation in the way Chazal use it, and she was using it in a negative way to say, you do nothing. You're just like a chaya ra'ah, that you take away things that belong to the Jews, and you do nothing for them. When the pressure sets in, when they need you, you do nothing for them. So it says, the Gemara is not the only mandamar. There are two ways of understanding this. Knas v'yesh omrim, mishmarto shoha lavo, v'nichnas yesheva v'achiv imo. Says they were always late. They came on Fridays when the incoming mishmar has to show up. They have to be on time to take over the avodah of the mizbeach, avodah of the Beit HaMikdash, and the mishmar of this family came always late. Now some of them maybe didn't show up, but they always were late, and therefore Yeshevav, the outgoing mishmar, the mishmar before them serving the Beit HaMikdash, they were the ones who had to step in and take over some of their jobs as well, and hence the knas of the mishmara of Bilga. So says the Gemara, I understand, according to this second understanding, why is going to be a knas for everyone. But before that, says the Gemara, even though that usually we say oy l'rasha, oy l'shcheno, right? Where do we say that, by the way? What's the source of oy l'rasha, oy l'shcheno? It's Mishnah Negaim, right? If you have a wall and you have a negat tzarat on the wall, so sometimes you have different dinim, right? Until you have to, at some point, you have to knock the wall off and build a new wall. And the Mishnah says that if you have a negat tzarat on the wall, and the wall is a shared wall between your house and the next door house, so then what happens? You lose it, and they lose it. What did they do wrong? And the Mishnah says, oy l'rasha, oy l'shcheno. Sometimes you have the neighbors that they are affected by their neighboring negativity. Again, this is a rasha living here. The Gemara discusses what the source of negat tzarat is going to be. People usually we discuss what the Gemara in Erchid of Tetvav says about lashon hara that creates negat tzarat, but there also talks about sarut ayin, a person that's stingy, and so on. Oh, actually, it says you have to bring all of your furniture and vessels out before the Kohen comes in And the guy, when the neighbors asked him, said, "Do you have such and such tool?" He said, "No, I don't have any." And now he has to bring everything out, and everyone is going to see it. But nevertheless, is oil rasha, oil shcheno, right? And usually that's how it works. But over here, it's not going to be bad for their shachen. Their outgoing shachen is their brother Yeshevav. Yeshevav is the mishmara before Bilga, and they get schar for Bilga being a negative mishmara because they always end up being in Tzafon, which is more chashuv, even when their outgoing mishmara is still going to be in Tzafon. So says the Gemara, the shachen of Bilga is Mishmeret Yeshevav, and because Bilga was fined, Leolam choleket bedarom, Yeshevav achiv besafon. They are going to always be in Safon, which is more chashuv. Fine. Says Gemara, Bishlama mandama nistakru shbilga leolam, Bishlama mandama mishmeret mishmarto shohalavo. According to the second pshat, that the knas was because they came late, then we could understand. Hainu de kanselan lekula mishmar. That is the reason why we find the entire mishmar, because the entire mishmar is a negative action of not coming on time. If the whole mishmar is coming late, so the whole mishmar is going to be knas. We understand. But according to the first thing, which is the more interesting one, that because of this whole story of Miriam, the daughter of Bilga, that came and she became a goya, and she went on top of the mizbeach and she stamped the mizbeach. Who cares about the daughter? If she was a negative person, we are going to be now fining the father and the mother because of the daughter? So says the Gemara, Amar Abaye in. Abaye says, yes, of course we do. Amri inshi, like people say, Shuta de Yenuka beshuka, the speech, the mannerism of a child in the marketplace, od de avua, od de ime. It's either from his father or from his mother. Certain things you pick up in the house, especially back in a day when there was no school the way we have it. People went to cheder, they learned Torah, they were exposed to Rebbe, secular studies that such way, no media for sure, and so on. So where do they pick it up from? Pick it up from the parents. The values of a family comes from the parents. So if you have a daughter that even after she's Hemira Data, she could bring herself to such disrespect, such level of audacity towards her, the Mizbeach, that comes from a lack of sensitivity from the parents, from the household. Therefore, she does it like that. The whole, now, why don't we just say, Oy l'rasha oy l'shcheno? We just say, Oy l'rasha oy l'shcheno usually, right? Because she's not a part of the mishmara. She's a woman, right? Now, you could say, Oy l'rasha oy l'shcheno for the rest of the mishmara, once the household of Bilga himself are punished because of this concept. So therefore, we have to have two steps here. One is, once she's like this, you could tell what's going on in the household of Bilga. If she could bring herself to speak like this, it shows the insensitivity of the parents and their respect, the lack of kavod for the Torah already from the parents. And once the parents are going to be fined, are going to be punished, then you can say, well, that the whole mishmara, they are the shchenim of this family, Bilga. Then we can understand why the fine is extended on the entire mishmar. So says the Gemara, umishum avua beima kansiran lekura mishmara. And the Gemara says this last question, that because of one family, the parents of this woman, Miriam, Bat Bilga, we're going to find the entire Mishmar. Amar Abaye, Abaye says, and that, yes, oy le Rasha, oy lishcheno. Woe is to the Rasha, and woe is to his Shachen, that yes, sometimes a person gets punished for being the Shachen of these people. And we had this by Korach, right? Obviously, Korach and his Edah, they had all these 250 people from Bnei Reuben, and Reuben was a Shachen of Korach. So it's oy le Rasha, oy lishcheno. You see that effect is always there. So that's really the concluding Gemara of Masechet Succah in the course of the Siyum. We'll finish Be'ezrat Hashem the last line over here, and we'll have a powerful insight into this whole story of Bilga and Miriam. But we started the Masechet with a powerful point from the Vilna Gaon. We have several times brought this back up in the course of the Masechta, and we're going to finish with some beautiful thoughts from the Gaon also in Even Shlema. So we started the Masechta with saying that the whole Chag HaSukkot is really a commemoration of Aranei HaKavod, and hence really it should be in Chodesh Nisan, because they got down Aranei HaKavod in Nisan. So the order really should even be Pesach, Sukkot, and Shavuot. Right? Pesach and Sukkot really happened simultaneously at the same time as they came out. Already you had the Anan that was protecting them from the Egyptian army, and then Aranei HaKavod and so on. So why is it that we do it 6 months later? The Bet Yosef asked this question in the beginning of the Chod Sukkah. The Bet Yosef says that it's perhaps because he would not the tour and Marab Bet Yosef, that it was not clear if you would go in the beautiful days of the season of Nisan is a beautiful season. You go out, it's springtime, it's warm and nice, everyone is going out. And therefore it would not be nikar that you're doing it for Sorech Mitzvah, and therefore you wait until the weather is still okay, but people are all going in. It's becoming chilly, and then you go out. This shows clearly that's a mitzvah. We also spoke about the first Shuvah in Minchas Shlomo, Rabbi Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, that a person needs to have kavanah for being yotzei the mitzvah of Sukkah. And if you don't have it, not only you're not yotzei the mitzvah of Sukkah, but it's considered as though you did the averah of eating outside Sukkah, even though you're sitting inside the Sukkah and eating. So the mindset of the mitzvah is an essential point, hence the teretz of Bet Yosef. But the Gaon says something far more beautiful. The Gaon says, no, this is very specific. It happened exactly on the 15th of Tishrei, not on 15th of Nisan, because we lost the Aranei HaKavod, and then we regained them a second time. We lost them by Chet HaEgel, and then when we started the building of the Mishkan, that's when we got the Aranei HaKavod back, and he makes the whole cheshbon by Yom Kippur. Moshe Rabbeinu brings the luchot back, and then you have the days of announcement of the materials of the Mishkan being of Tshuva. It's a beautiful, beautiful insight from the Gaos. That's how we started the Masechta. That's how we went through the Masechta, explained many items throughout Masechet Succah by this one yesod of the Vilna Gaon. We're going to finish with one element of Even Shlema as well. The Grav in the Gaon writes that all of the Moadim of Chodesh Tishrei represent the things that are going to happen in La'atid Lavo, right? So when you have Rosh Hashanah in Chodesh Tishrei, the beginning of Tishrei starts in Rosh Hashanah, that is corresponding to Yom Adin HaGadol V'Hanora. There's going to be a Yom Adin HaGadol, in end of all time. You will have a day of judgment. Now, this is a very big question, that if every person, when they die, they have their own Yom Adin, right? Every Rosh Hashanah you have Yom Adin. Why do you need so many Yom Adins? Why do you have to have a Yom Adin HaGadol V'Hanora, a great day of judgment? And the Chaim Brisker actually said, it's a very, very powerful thought. Chaim Brisker writes that because the Yom Adin HaGadol really includes all of, not just what you did, but all of the ripple effects and the ramifications of your deeds and your thoughts in the world. So if you had, imagine, a teacher of Torah that he created Talmidim or wrote a Sefer, so it's not just the zchut of what he had in his lifetime, but now his student has another 1,000 students. So all of those he gets royalty with, and each one of those, they have their own students, and the Sfarim that come out of that, and the people who do tshuva because of those, all of those ripple effects, layers and layers and layers of royalty to the act that one person did is going to be, and that's the pshat. They say, Sifotav, Dovot the kever, when a person says something in the name of a person in Torah that the person has been deceased, the lips, so to speak, of that person, Dovot bekever, they're going to be working in the kever. So that is Yom Adin HaGadol, right? And he goes through the whole thing of Yom Kippur, Chag HaSukkot, and then he says, after all of that, Gog Magog, the whole thing of Acharit HaYamim and Olam Haba, and then says Yomot HaMashiach, and then says the Gaon, but when you get to Shmini Atzeret is keneged this concept of Yichud. It's got to be only us and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's got to be only us and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That day, the last day of Acharit HaYamim, Hashem Echad Ushmo Echad is keneged Shmini Atzeret. Shmini Atzeret is only Hashem and us. The oneness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the oneness of Klal Yisrael together, that really is the koach of Shmini Atzeret. I heard from Rabbi Shlomo Bernstein a beautiful, beautiful thing. He says he brought in the name of the Sefer Mikra Kodesh, or the Italian Gedolim and Mekubalim, that he says, why don't we sit in the Sukkah in Shmini Atzeret? Even though that really, Sfekat Yoma, if he should dictate, based on what we do, first day and second day we celebrate as Chag HaSukkot, right? Because maybe second day is really the first day. So by Shmini Atzeret, really maybe it's the seventh day, right? And the second day of that should also be. Says, why don't we sit in the Sukkah, especially in Eretz Yisrael, a whole question. So he says something very beautiful. He says, because in Shmini Atzeret, you don't need the Shmirah that you normally would require in Chag HaSukkot. Chag HaSukkot is us gathering under the Sila de Mehemnuta, under the shade of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and the protection of Sila de Mehemnuta. That's the protection that we had in the Gemara. We discussed Sukkah is going to be Lesel Yomam, is going to be like a shade from all the dangers, all the difficulties, and so on and so forth. It says in Shmini Atzeret, there is nothing else in the world. And you're living in a reality, in a concept that only HaKadosh Baruch Hu exists. In that world, there is no danger. There is nothing to have to hide from. You have that direct relationship, direct connection with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which is so beautiful and so powerful. But at the same time, the Gemara says in Masechet Brachot, the Samech Aleph, the Gemara there discusses the death of Rabbi Akiva. The end of Rabbi Akiva's life was, a difficult situation by the Romans combing his flesh with masrekot shel barzel, and he was saying Shema. The Gemara says he was saying Shema. All his talmidim are there, and he's saying Shema, and Hayam Ma'arich be'echad. He was saying Echad, elongated Echad, Yatsa nishmato be'echad, says the Gemara. His neshama left his body as he was saying Echad. Yatsa Bat-Kol came out and said, Ashrecha Rabbi Akiva. Right? Fortunate you are that your neshama went out with Echad. Now, there's a Khatam Sofer that we mentioned before, that he says, Or Zarua, the Sefer Or Zarua, one of the Rishonim, he named his Sefer Or Zarua because he had a question, halakhic question. How do you write Akiva? right? You want to write a ketuvah, more so you want to write a get. How do you write akiva? I have to pronounce it, not just pronounce it, I have to write it properly. Is it ayin kuf yud with hey, or is it with aleph? Is the end of akiva aleph or hey? And they came to his dream, and they read to him the pasuk, or zarua letzadik uleyishre lev simcha. Or zarua letzadik uleyishre lev simcha spells out at the sofet tevot, at the last letter of each word, Rabbi Akiva, right? Rabbi Akiva, but Rabbi Akiva with a hey. Simcha at the end, that is hey. And Rabbi Akiva so he was so excited about this whole dream, so he called his sefer Or Zarua, right after this whole story. So says the Chatam Sofer in the Gemara, every time that Rabbi Akiva is written with Aleph, not with a hey. And says the Chatam Sofer beautifully. He says because Rabbi Akiva is a representative of being echad. That story in the Gemara Masechet Succah that we just brought, right? Sheyatza nishmato be'echad, but really it's more than that. Says the Chatam Sofer, the Asara Harugei Malchut, the 10 martyrs, they were keneged the 10 brothers of Yosef, so to speak, that they were in Mechirat Yosef. But says the Chatam Sofer, there weren't really 10, there were 9 because Reuben wasn't there, right? So who was with them to make the Shvuah HaKadosh Baruch Hu? And it says, who is Keneged HaKadosh Baruch Hu? To be a kapara for Hashem, that's Rabbi Akiva, because Hashem is Echad, and Rabbi Akiva is in that level, that madrega of Echad, and the pasuk that the Gemara reads for Rabbi Akiva is this very pasuk, that it says, Rabbi Akiva, Alav HaKatuv Omer, Moshcheni acharecha narutza. The pasuk that is mentioned by Shemini Atzeret. But the pasuk of Shemini Atzeret says the Vilna Gaon, Moshcheni acharecha narutza hevi'ani hamelech chadarav nagila v'nismecha bach. That the day that the king brings me to his inner sanctum, to the inner chambers, that day is the day of Shemini Atzeret. And the pasuk for it says the Vilna Gaon is Hevi'ani Amelech Hadarav Nagila V'nismecha Bach. That is the pasuk of Rabbi Akiva, because the Gemara says in Masechet Hagigah, Daf Tedvav, the Gemara says that 4 people went Nichnesu lePardes. It was Ben Zuma, Ben Azai, Elisha Ben Avuya, and Rabbi Akiva. All of the 3 were damaged one way or another. But says the Gemara, Rabbi Akiva was nichnas leShalom ve'yatza beShalom. He went in intact, he came back intact. Ve'alav HaKatuv Omer, says the Gemara, on him the pasuk says, Hevi'ani hamelech chadarav nagila v'nismecha bach. HaKadosh Baruch Hu brings me to his inner chambers, nagila v'nismecha bach. That's the pasuk of Shemini Atzeret, which is said by Rabbi Akiva. That oneness that we have with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, representing the oneness that Rabbi Akiva had achieved, and we gave the kapara for, in that way, for the one of the world, for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So that becomes really the essence of Shemini Atzeret, and that's why, says the Maaser Rav, the sefer that encapsulates the minhagim of the Vilna Gaon, it says that Vilna Gaon was tremendously sameach. He was very, very happy in Chag HaSukkot, but his climaxical simcha was on Shemini Atzeret. That day of Shemini Atzeret was Nagila v'nismecha bach, right? The climax of the simcha that he experienced was on the day of oneness with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's a beautiful, beautiful insight of going through Chodesh Tishrei, understanding that this is going to be the La'atid Lavo, and the ultimate dvekut of Am Yisrael to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That day of oneness, so to speak, really is Chag HaSukkot, climaxing by Shemini Atzeret, which ends beautifully this story of Mizbeach being the vessel, the tool of our korbanot, our being karev, connecting with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and the importance thereof. And that's why hence the fine for someone that could bring themselves to disrespect such a concept of oneness that we have with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Be'ezrat Hashem will finalize this piece in the Siyum. And really, I want to thank everyone that has been with us throughout the entire Masechta. It's a beautiful, beautiful Masechta, and we are looking very much forward for the next Masechta.